How many realtors actually show up at a listing presentation and ask a simple question? Do you understand what your capital gain tax liability is when you sell? Nobody asks that question. Why is that? That's the failure of our industry. Because the failure of our industry says that I'm going to teach you how to make money for yourself. Never mind the other guy. That's our national mission, to care for another human being, to look after your client like they actually matter, and to treat them that way with knowledge, compassion, and curiosity. Because it's all in the question that matters. Everything is based on curiosity, understanding what matters to them. I can't be the judge if you should buy or sell. I can't be that. That's your choice. But most realtors agents are the judge. They say, no, you should buy or you should sell. I say, well, that's not for me to say. I got to ask further questions.
On family side of things, real estate kind of quietly sets families up for conflict. Where does this breakdown usually begin?
It breaks down because of the myth that my kids aren't going to fight. My kids will figure it out. Or some people actually say, well, it's going to be their problem. And that's how people leave it.
Today's guest believes most families don't lose wealth because of bad investments. They lose it because they never made a plan. Ihara is a nationally recognized real estate wealth advisor with over $1 billion in sales and hundreds of successful 1031 exchanges. For nearly 2 decades, he's helped families build, protect, and transfer wealth through real estate while preventing the conflicts that destroy generational harmony. Today, we're talking about property decisions, senior transitions, taxes, and how real estate can either divide families or bring them together. Let's jump in.
Welcome to the Icons of Real Estate podcast. You didn't start out as a real estate wealth advisor, did you? So what moment shifted you from selling homes to planning lives?
Well, when I got into real estate, I realized in order for me to have a big business, I needed to figure out how to get listings, right? And how do I get listings in a market? And remember, this was in 2005, and we all know what happened in 6, 7, and 8, right? The downturn in the market. But what I realized was I had to solve a problem. And then once I solved the problem, I could get business. And there were 2 problems that I realized. One, there was this huge demographic of people that were older. We call them baby boomers and their parents. And these people had problems, right? The first problem is the home doesn't fit them anymore. It's not appropriate anymore. So I became the solution for that. I helped them understand, where do you go? How much does it cost? What does life look like? How do I get there? Who can help me, right? I became that solution. And when I became that solution, I connected to retirement communities, and then they started sending me business. I connected with the trusted advisors that every wealthy person has, which is a CPA, a trust attorney, and financial planner. And these people started sending me business. So as I became known in my market for that, I really started in six months after I started in business to us, I wrote an article in the newspaper called The Experts Page. And in the experts page, I explained the problems, and they came to a seminar. So I started doing seminars 6 months into getting a license in real estate. I've been doing this for 20 years. I've done over 1,500 seminars since I started. And the whole premise behind that was just education. I wasn't selling anything. I was just identifying a problem and I was solving it. And that's kind of how we started. And then what we found out, Tomas, is these same older adults, I found out they had a vast amount of wealth in real estate. They were the greatest amount of pool of people that had investment properties. Well, then I figured out, hey, they had a problem. They didn't want their property anymore. They were burdened by it, but they were scared because they go to the CPA and the CPA says, hey, don't sell your property because there's this thing called capital gain tax. So then what I did is my very first listing, the client came to me and says, I want to sell, but I don't want to pay capital gain tax. And this was her primary residence. And most people think you can't do a 1031 exchange with a primary residence. That's actually not true. You can do it if it's a mixed use property, meaning part of your home you live in and part of it you don't. So I built a model around that. I solved her problem. She told her friends. Other people started learning based on my fact that I taught 1031 exchange classes for the last 20 years, that I could provide a solution to their biggest problem, which is capital gain tax. And since then, I've done over 450 1031 exchanges, and I've never failed one. So I became the national expert in doing that, right? And it wasn't because that was my goal. My goal was to prevent the family dispute, and keep money in families' pockets to create a legacy. Everybody wants to create a legacy. But as you get older, you start thinking of other people besides yourself. Did you know that 70% of families fight over real estate after the parents die? The data comes from attorneys, right? And if you talk to anybody over the age of 40, they're going to know somebody that had some kind of dispute over real estate after their parents passed away. Well, the problem was nobody had a solution. So I came up with a solution. It's called a pre-inheritance plan. We create plans such that your kids never fight. The first question most people ask is, well, that's not going to happen to my family. My family's good. And then it happens to their family. And so you kind of scratch your head. So why does that happen all the time? That statistic, 70%, is a vast number that people in denial don't think that that's going to happen to them, and it does. Well, here's the problem, Tomas. In the world of real estate in the United States, wealthy people who have real estate, they keep their property in a trust. And many of these folks have more than one child. Well, what does the trust say? Upon my demise, my kids share it. How do you do that if they don't agree? And so simple question is, are all your kids alike? No. Do they think alike? No. Do they act alike? No. Are they in the same economic phase of life? No. Well, if that's the case, you're going to be a statistic if you don't figure this out. Would you like a plan? Everybody says yes, right? And so what we do is we unlock wealth and reposition it to whatever matters most to them. Let's say you have a $3 million property and you got 3 kids. When I ask them, in a series of questions I ask them is, do your kids own their own property? They say no. By the way, did you know, Tomas, in the United States, in 1990, 50% of 35-year-olds own their own home? You know what it is today? 7% of 35-year-olds own their own home. Why is that? Because inflation rose so much, and this demographic of people are spenders because they want to keep up with everybody on Instagram. So they spend all their money, right? They're materialistic. They didn't save. And the fact that values rose faster than they could save. So we have a gap, right? What I do is I help people understand that if you have a child, I ask them the question, does your child own their own property? They say no. If they could, would they? They say yes. So what if I sold this property for you and I did a 1031 exchange, right? And I let them be there on the selection committee to pick the one that you're going to buy. It stays in your name, and then they move in. They could stay there if they wanted to. They could even co-own it if they wanted to. But at the end of the day, when they pass away, the older adult, it goes to the kids tax-free. This is called a pre-inheritance plan. These are plans that wealth advisors, financial planners, trust attorneys, and CPAs call me for advice to help their clients. See, I'm on a national mission to change the world, Tomas. Sounds like a big task. It's to change the world and how people see the realtor and how the realtor shows up. Because there's a big flaw and failure of our industry is that there's a void in training on what matters to the client. See, our industry is really good at teaching us how to sell real estate. It's really good at how to go get business. The words to say when you go knock on a door, really good at that, right? Those are all sales tactics. Mine is a consultative approach. It's about asking questions and helping people self-discover their best journey. So my model is curiosity over judgment. I'm going to ask questions such that I help you understand what your best journey is based on understanding tax law and basing understanding trust law, right? And also how you prevent capital gains taxes. But our biggest mission is to prevent the family dispute and keep money in families' pockets.
Nice. And then the 70% of the family conflicts over the family inheritance, I can say that my family is 100%, has an 100% record on that. So 70% is already an improvement from my side of things. It is like even if you think you're different, you're not, and it is with preparation that we can avoid that, right? I'm really excited about this conversation today, Dan, and we'll talk a little bit about the family and the property decisions and go a little bit deep into the capital gains tax, which I think it's something nationwide, as you're saying. You're based out of Honolulu, Hawaii, but it transcends so much more than that beautiful island, right? It's something that all the real estate agents in the country should be on about. On the family side of things, so obviously, like, real estate kind of quietly sets families up for conflict, right? It's not like it's not like in a click that they start the conflict. they start saying one thing, I didn't like that, blah, blah, blah. Like, where does this breakdown usually begin?
It breaks down because of the myth that my kids aren't going to fight. My kids will figure it out. Or some people actually say, well, it's going to be their problem. And that's how people leave it. This generation, many of them are feeling that. But then there's a large portion of the population that are seeing it cursory. I mean, they're seeing their friends or neighbors, their family members fighting, and they go, shoot, I don't want that happening to my family. And that's why they're reaching out to us. Because when I ask everybody, do you have a real estate plan? They go, what's that? It's a plan that helps you build wealth, protect wealth, and pass on wealth. So which one of those are more important to you? And if you're over the age of 65, it's passing on wealth, right? I'm saying at some point in my time, I'm going to leave this planet, and then what, right? And they don't know. That's one. The other is those that have a trust, they never really read their trust or really understand what the trust document does or is and the power of it. The other is they don't understand taxes. They don't. They don't understand the consequences of putting somebody on title and forcing that child to have a huge tax burden after you pass away because they have a carryover in cost basis, not a step up in cost basis. And that's the big failure of our industry. That should be the number one thing we train is tax law. The number one thing we should teach our realtors is, hey, there's an Internal Revenue Code 121. Do you know what that is? Nobody says yes. I travel all over the country. I got 400 members that I train and when they come to me, nobody knows this. And that's when you own a property and you live in it 2 out of the last 5 years, the government gives you an exemption of that tax. Married couple, $500,000. What does that mean? Well, if you have a property, you bought it for $500 and you can sell it at $1 million, you can sell it and get all that money tax-free. Today, you have no other asset that you could sell when it gained $500,000 and not pay any tax. Real estate's the only one that's left. So that's Internal Revenue Code 121. Then there's this thing called 1031 exchange for investment properties. By the way, Tomas, did you realize that 34% of all households in America are rentals? 4%. 1 in 3 homes you drive by, it's a rental. And guess what? The guy that owns it, he's a landlord. On average, he owns 3 of them. So if you're looking for listings, and if you're an agent listening to this today, why would you go knock on a stranger's door that doesn't even own anything? I would go and find the people that have the vast amount of real estate wealth and teach them about the solutions that you have. And this is what we do in our training. Solve the biggest problem. It's kind of like, do you think the general practitioner gets paid the same amount of money as the brain surgeon? No, right? You solve the bigger problem, you get paid the most. That's what we're doing. Solving the biggest problem people have.
And that's with, can be solved with the planning part, right?
Yeah.
Why do and what is kind of like the general solution that you think could work on families avoiding planning, right? Is it lack of information? Is it real estate agents not just proposing that? Because what you're telling me is that people approach you as a reaction, right? As a reaction, like, oh, I saw John, John is not talking to his brother anymore. Because of the inheritances, so it's a reaction. So they come to you, oh, Dad, save me. I wanna be happy with my family. How can we make this into an action? Like, how early? It's not like 35, and my parents are still healthy. That I say, hey guys, like we need to talk about it. We need to talk about something. Like where can we start the action on the planning?
Right about your age. I say the book that we wrote is applicable for anybody over 30. Why is that? Because in your 20s, you don't really care about anybody except yourself. When you get into your 30s, you start realizing, hey, family matters. And then also when you're in your 30s, your parents are 50 or 60 or 70, right? And so they've amassed wealth. And the younger person's thinking in their head is, oh, shucks, when they're gone, what's going to happen? What's the plan? Like, I got brothers and sisters, and shoot, we don't talk right now, man, what's going to happen when they're gone? Who's going to get what, right? And so the real answer to us is just the conversation. Start the conversation. Ask the right question, right? What's going to happen when you're gone? Are these properties in a trust? See, if they're not in a trust, that's failure number 1, because it's going to go to probate. And it's unfortunate that realtors are helping people buy real estate, but we're never having a conversation about putting it in a trust, because it doesn't impact the realtor. It impacts the owner, your client, just like capital gains taxes. How many realtors actually show up at a listing presentation and ask a simple question? Do you understand what your capital gain tax liability is when you sell? Nobody asks that question. Why is that? That's the failure of our industry. Because the failure of our industry says that I'm going to teach you how to make money for yourself. Never mind the other guy. That's our national mission, to care for another human being, to look after your client like they actually matter, and to treat them that way with knowledge, compassion, and curiosity. Because it's all in the question that matters. It's everything is based on curiosity, understanding what matters to them. I can't be the judge if you should buy or sell. I can't be that. That's your choice. But most realtors agents are the judge. They say, no, you should buy or you should sell. I said, well, that's not for me to say. I got to ask further questions. What's causing you to want to sell? Where would you go? What are you looking for? What is this going to do to your life? How does that make you feel? See, if you show up with curiosity, it changes the whole game. And now people don't see you as a transactional commodity. You're an advisor, a real estate wealth advisor.
Because even on those questions, I think realtors, they don't ask their questions because it's like, what's in it for me? Like nothing. Right? Do I get commission on that? I don't. And there's one thing that I've actually said before, and I think there's a misconception that it's not like because you're an advisor that people will only come to you for advice. You're not going to sell homes. The approach that you can have, that I think you can add a bit on that because you're the expert. Curiosity is an amazing sales skill. Because if you're genuine curious about someone, if you're genuinely asking the right questions, you might not even need to pitch because they might just pitch themselves the decision.
They always do. In my world, this is the only way I show up, in curiosity. And not why are you doing something? The words matter. What's causing you? Because that phrase, what's causing you, there's always a cause for everybody to do something, right? There's just in my book, I have 62 questions that we give to consumers and we give to realtors to ask to help them self-discover their best journey.
And it is apart from those 52 questions that I think we need to put that out there. But obviously, you shifted as well from a transitional realtor to more of a consultative advisor positioning. How can an agent that is listening right now do to take that?
Yeah, that's going to be the tough part. I got to be honest with you. It's hard. We're all programmed to tell people what to do. From when we were children, we were told that if you stood up in class and raised your hand, you had a question, you look stupid. So people stop asking questions, right? Your parents told you what to do, so you modeled that. You started telling people what to do. And so it's programming. We got to change the programming. It goes back to the core way the mind works, right? Your programming impacts your thoughts, and your thoughts impact your feelings, and your feelings impact your actions, and your actions reprogram your results, and the results reprogram your thinking. So it's a circle, right? But it starts with the programming. We got to change that. So here's a simple question for anybody on the call is, what's the question you want to ask yourself in every moment of your life? What's the question that I need to ask that I didn't ask? And once you start doing that, because that's how I changed. I got to tell you, I was never like this all the time. I'm 62 years old. Maybe 10 years ago, I showed up at a listing presentation and I nailed it. I just said, man, I got this thing. And the client led me to believe that I was going to get it. It was a $3 million listing right down the street from my house. And then she calls me and said, hey, Dan, that was so amazing. Thank you so much. But you know what happens after the but? I didn't get the listing. Well, interestingly enough, I brought a young intern with me to shadow me. And I said, what did we do wrong? And I thought we nailed it. She goes, I wonder if we should have asked her what mattered to her. And that was my aha. That was my turning point in my life. It's like, dang. So now I always ask that to a client. What are the top 3 things you're looking for in a realtor? And that's all I talk about, what matters to them. That was a big aha for me.
Yeah, and sometimes it's a lucky intern that will change your...
Yeah, well, I truly believe we learn from failure. And you're looking at the biggest failure you've ever seen. I've failed more than anybody else. But through failure, I learned better paths to go. And then over time, I learned better questions to ask. Like one of the things I used to ask is, hey, do you have investment properties? And this lady, she was signing a listing agreement and everything was fine. And I asked her, do you have an investment property? She says, no. And as we walk out the door, she grabs my hand and she goes, Dan, what about my other properties? I go, what What other properties? You said you didn't have investment properties. You go, oh no, these aren't investment properties. These are my mom's 3 properties that she gave to me when she died. It's the thinking, the words matter, right? So from a realtor, you think everybody who has investment properties is an investor. That's not how the world sees themselves. So I had to change the question. Do you own more than one property? That was a magic question, right? So it's not salesy. It's very coming from curiosity. And I found that everybody said, yes. I go, holy smokes. How's that working for you? I said, oh, I hate that. So if you could remove the burden, would you? You go, yeah. Is Thursday or Friday better for us to see if we should get together to see if that works? He goes, yeah, Friday's good. In my training, I teach realtors 3 to 5 questions to get an appointment and 3 to 5 questions to secure an agreement.
And I think those questions, I don't know if they're going to be in the book we're about to promote or not. But one thing I can say is that it's very true. When you try to copy a model without the values, like it's only short term. Maybe you can work once, but if you don't really understand things, it's not going to work out for the long term. You know, the metaphor that I always use is even like to how can we prevent trash on the street? It's not exactly picking up trash, is it? It's through education, right? It's through educating from the little kids, because I would say if an adult is throwing trash in the street by now, I would say there's no hope. Just focus on the kids. But there's still hope for realtors. Obviously, like the programming here starts with education. You have your book coming out, Property Decisions.
Yes.
Which would be incremental for this. Look at it, incremental for this programming. Can you tell us a little bit more about the book and about the real estate wealth hive as well?
Yeah, one of the biggest problems I saw was that families were fighting too much. So I wanted to avoid that. That's why it's called Property Decisions, and because people are making bad decisions, not because they're not smart, not because of emotions. It's just because they didn't think this through well enough. Right? They weren't educated in certain areas. Most people, most families aren't missing effort or good intentions. They're missing a plan. And in this book, we create a framework for them to see a plan. It's called Plan, PLAN. We talk about properties. And when we talk about properties, we actually measure those properties. Not only the value of them, but its cap rate, its cash on cash return. In the event you sold it, what would the capital gain tax be? We start with that. And that's a big void in our real estate industry, because most realtors 30 years in the business don't know how to do that. That's just something all of our people on our team do on a basic framework. Then there's L is longevity. What do you want life to look like between now and the end? Right? Because I can guarantee you, Thomas, there will be a day, I guarantee you, there will be a day that you and we're going to leave this planet. And if we all agree to that guarantee, here's a second guarantee I can give you. I guarantee you that upon the demise of the last of the 2 spouses, that's the day of transfer of wealth. So if that's the case, if we know we're going to die, we know that's a transfer of wealth, what's your plan? So it fulfills your wishes and dreams for your loved ones. And that's the conversation that people are starting to now understand. They need to have that conversation. The longevity, the L part, is not only that, but it's like your health, right? What if you need care? Your hobbies, what do you like to do? Travel, right? And all of these things, what do you want life to look like between now and the end? Because it's a tough question I ask everyone. And it's people, I'm 62 years old, so I can do this. I'm old enough. Is how many good summers do you think you got left? And it makes you go internal. Like, I'm not going to live forever. And when I say good summer, that means I'm walking, I'm running, I can do things that I want to do. It's not like I'm in a wheelchair. That's not a good summer. So how many of those do you think you got left? And then it puts a realization that time matters. How I spend my time matters. With whom I choose to do it with and how I want to do it. These are questions about life that realtors don't have, but a consultant that really cares will. That's longevity. A is assets. I start with, believe it or not, in a 30-minute conversation. My strategy sessions are 60 minutes, but within 30 minutes, they give me their entire net worth. Why would they give a stranger all of their wealth? Because by that time, I've asked about 30 questions. And so they know that I care, because the questions I ask, it's not about me. It's about them. So my first opening question on the asset side, the financial side, is, do you have long-term care insurance? Nobody asked that question. Why do I care about that? Because I want to help you plan. Because here's your problem. When you're older, your first question is, am I going to run out of money? Well, how do you know that until somebody helps you? Most people don't. They think they're going to run out of money. When I show them it's impossible for you to run out of money, then they say, oh, maybe I should start spending it. Ah. And so then the conversation goes to, many people, they really wish they could be a better steward of wealth. Would you like to be a better steward of wealth? And it changes the way they think about wealth. It changes the way they think about life, about their assets, about their loved ones. And I tell people, hey, there's no way you're going to run out of money. When you travel, go fly first class. Why? Because you can't take it with you. You just can't, right? And so enjoy it. You're the one that earned it. So by that time I get to assets, I know all of their Social Security, their pensions, the stocks and bonds, everything in their bank accounts. I write it down. And then I can prove to them you're not going to run out of money. Right? And then it's the next generation. Who do you want to bless? What do you want? If you had a dream of what you would want your kids or grandkids to do or feel or learn, what would it be? And many people would like to teach them how to be a better human, but also to teach them how to build wealth on their own, right? And not be spoiled and silver spoon, but learn how to do it. Well, when you're alive, that's the best time to do it. When you're dead, you can't do it. You just can't. It's too late. And so now we're teaching multiple generations how to build wealth, to invest, right? Because investing is the only way you're going to get anywhere in life. Is you can't save yourself. We put the story in the Bible about the talents. Do you want to bury your treasures, or you're going to invest it and make it multiply? And that's the end portion. So in our book, we teach people the plan framework. We teach you the questions to ask. And if they need help, we're going to be available for them. And then with that, they can come to the Real Estate Wealth Hive, where we're going to have not only the book available, but we're going to have probably 9 to 12 hours of free consumer training that they can learn things that no one's going to teach them. And this is based on 20 years of me helping thousands of folks go through this journey of life, right? The building of wealth, the protecting of wealth, and then the passing on of wealth.
And when is the book out?
February 23rd.
February 23rd. All right.
If you go to Amazon, you can see it. It's you can buy the ebook for 99 cents. The paperback book's $10. All the proceeds are going to a nonprofit.
99 cents to grab hold of your legacy. That's too cheap.
Yeah. Well, again, the goal is to change the world, and we don't want to have any barriers in doing that. I believe every American should have that book. Millions of books should be sold, and it's going to be available on February 23rd.
It's happening. And you heard it here on the Icons of Real Estate podcast. Thank you so much, Dan, for coming on, and I'll see you guys next week.